Richard Martinez here with the Rebuild You Show, where we are highlighting people who are serious about growing their lives, about all the most important areas of their lives, them winning and doing it with integrity. Today we have a guest, and this guest has gone through some crazy things in his life. He's almost died many times, has beaten death, beaten cancer, and not only that, but is now a business owner, multiple businesses, and doing some amazing things in his industry, has a great heart, man of God. You're going to check out Freddie.
Good afternoon. My name is Freddie Nawabi from Freddie's Deli, business over here in Irvine. And I have a health conscious deli. We do sandwiches, wraps, salads, acai bowls, health conscious deli.
All right. Actually, and just so you guys know, I actually just ate there today. Before recording this, I went over there and I wanted to say hi, and I knew we were going to have this and wanted to eat there, kind of connect before, having this conversation. And it was really good because I learned some things that I didn't know that we can even pull up here. Yeah. So that was a good little warm up, I think.
Absolutely.
But food, great. Like great food. The quality, he's clean. All of the ingredients, there's flavor, and it's healthy conscious.
Yeah.
So that's what I really enjoy of that. Thank you for having the quality, the friendliness, the cleanliness, having it all on point, man. Good job.
Thank you.
So
compliment.
Is this like you having an owner, a restaurant, a deli? Like, is this in the family? Did it just start with you? Like, how'd this start?
Definitely stems from early childhood, from my mother's side of the family. My mom's oldest brother, he opened up an Italian pizzeria. It was called Napoli's Pizzeria over in Queens and Flushings in New York.
Okay.
And summertime, we would go and visit them all the time. And I'd love to follow my uncle to the restaurant every morning and get my hands dirty and, clean up. He would have me broom up and clean up around the area. I was probably about 5 and 6 years old. And
you already liked to go there and to be helpful.
Yeah.
Not just go and play. Yeah. You wanted to do something.
Yeah. I just loved the smell of food and the sound of hustle and just the dough being made fresh in front of me and the way they would make sauces. And I was just fascinated.
Interesting.
Early on. And I always wanted to get my hands dirty and learn about, something I didn't know about.
So already at 4 or 5 years old, you're already in it. So you're being exposed to entrepreneurship, food, even like how to cook things, like so many relationships, service, being exposed to so many different things, right? Now,
very true.
Were you already thinking like, I want to do this? Or what were you thinking at this time? I know it was a long time ago, but what was your thought process?
Yeah, that's almost 32 years ago. I was not thinking, is this exactly... Did I know that that's what I'm going to get into? It was more so, it was a passion and I enjoyed what I was doing and it didn't feel like work. Even, my mom and family, and I have 5 siblings, they were all really surprised that I would always get involved and help out. One of the things I did early on, I have 5 siblings in the house growing up. So I felt, compassion towards my mom, thinking and seeing how selfless she is, how much caring she is, what a provider she is. Not only did she raise 5 kids, my aunt was a single mom, and basically we took in 4 other kids. So we were in a big household, and I see my mom getting up super early in the morning and basically prepping breakfast for everyone, taking care of 2 families.
Wow.
So I felt like it was my duty to get up early with her, sometimes before her, trying to break the eggs and create the omelet and mix up all the different ingredients and spices and herbs.
It's not because she said you needed to or gave you that kind of responsibility. She was just modeling it.
Absolutely.
And you just respected what she was doing to the point where you just bought into it.
Yeah, I bought into it, and I felt it was very important for me to help out. I just felt something innately inside me, deep inside. Like I felt like I need to help and be of service and be useful.
Wow.
And I enjoyed that time because it brought me closer to my mom and we got to bond a lot,
Sure.
So got to have that intimate time with her and learn about her upbringing and, the way she blends spices and herbs and the fact that she made a lot of food, but also it was just poured with love. It wasn't just like food to fill you up. It was food to make your soul feel good too.
And where does that come from with your mom? Is that like before her as well, or?
To be honest, to me, it's surprising because she had many challenges growing up. She lost her father when she was maybe 6 years old,
Mhm.
and she lost her mother by the time she was 12 years old. So she had about 8 sisters and 4 brothers. So my
And
mom's,
where is she younger?
she was the second to last.
Second to so
Uh,
she
yeah.
had a lot of nurturing siblings that
Yeah.
nurtured her,
Yeah,
and
she
she just
was-
cut some of that nurturing. I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to help.
Correct. She was taken in by her youngest or one of the older sisters. So my mom and the youngest sister
Mhm.
were really raised by their older sister. And that was like the mom. And for me, I looked at her like a grandma because she was older, wiser. And, I respected her a lot. And when she says something, you quiet and you listen to what she's saying. And it's
Okay.
like a lesson to
She
learn.
was a shot caller.
Yeah, so it was an amazing opportunity to see that my mom's childhood was very rough. She was married by the time she was already 14. My dad was only 15 years old. So originally my family is from Afghanistan, where I was born in a small town in the capital called Kabul,
Okay.
a major city there in the capital of Afghanistan. And there, at a very young age, the life expectancy was very short, probably by 35, like you're already married with children. And by the time you're 15, 16, you're already married and have been working. So you're living almost a full life by 35, like you're retiring essentially out there.
Wow.
So it's a very rough country to have opportunities. And my parents both just worked constantly. My mom, she was a expert clothing designer. So at our young age, she would always make our clothes because it was something
And this was like,
helpful and
and it was a good,
cost-effective.
like you guys liked it? Because
Yeah.
I've heard this story with like Mexicans and they hated it because their mom would make them like some weird things and
No,
get bullied for it.
she actually cared enough to ask us what our favorite colors were and things like
Okay.
that. And she kind of tailored things to our size. So it wasn't like one size fits all kind of thing. It was more like she made things to complement like our personalities, which I thought was always cool and creative. So
Wow. So, and how about like, did you guys play sports at this time?
we had a lot of energy. So soccer is a very big sport. I always liked basketball because I was a big fan of Michael Jordan. He was one of my big early inspirations, Kobe Bryant. So I played a lot of basketball, a lot of soccer growing up. I enjoyed baseball as well. So basically all the sports, I was like very intramural. So I tried everything.
Okay. So in sports, you're getting exposed to the restaurant, just the business, the life, the interaction. That's doing something to you. Now, what was it like in school? What
School-
was happening in school?
Was an obstacle for me because when we came to America, I was about 5 or 6 years old. Came into the school system, and I was a little bit delayed learner. So I later found out in life I had several challenges, like I'm dyslexic, and I had like kind of a slow stuttering speech that I learned to get over later in life. I work with a lot of speech pathologists to overcome a lot of those things that I had, and
Wow.
English wasn't my first language. So I grew up in a household where my father nearly spoke a dozen languages. So I spoke a couple. So as a kid, I didn't know till later. I found out that I was enrolled in like Chinese school. So I was learning some Chinese, Mandarin,
Wow.
speaking
Some
Farsi,
of the hardest ones in
and
the
more
world.
like tribal in certain provinces in Afghanistan. It was a language called Pashto. So we spoke Pashto, Dari, Farsi. And also I grew up speaking German. So it was
What?
pretty interesting. Yeah. So,
And it's crazy because I've been blessed to do a lot of travel, and I've noticed that we're the only ones here in the U.S. that will speak 1, 2 at the most.
oh yeah.
Everywhere else it's like 4 or 5, and it's like normal. Like
Very
I
normal.
speak 3, 4.
Especially
It's
in
like,
Europe. Yeah. Usually my cousins and relatives, they'll speak, like you said, French, English, Italian, Portuguese,
Mhm.
English, Spanish. And that's like normal
Yeah,
out there in
that's
Europe. It's a
standard.
very normal thing. So circling back to the couple languages and being exposed to that early on. So you would think it would be easier for me to learn the English language, but it was a little harder for me to learn the grammar, the semantics. So I was a little slower. So originally, first, second, third grade, I was in ESL.
Okay.
And I was a little bit slower. So I would learn things at my own pace. I was a pretty bad reader. So, but I kept challenging myself to like continue reading the books. It took me like maybe something that would take you a month to read. It took me maybe half a year.
Do you remember getting like frustrated and knowing that why the heck is this harder for me?
Yeah. Yeah. I was always thinking to myself, like, why does it come so easily to my other siblings and they seem to be smart with book in school? And I seem to be a little behind and delayed. And it always took me longer to do my homework assignments that would maybe take anyone an hour to two. It took me like 3 to 4. So almost double the amount. It took me a little bit longer to grasp and retain information.
But you just kept at it.
I just kept persistent and kept at it and kept focusing. And even though it took me a minute to look at a whole word, I just told myself like I would like to learn this word and the meaning of it. So I had a lot of encyclopedias around me. And the thesaurus is to kind of see, like, to understand the word more deeply.
As a child.
As a child.
Because you don't see children doing this, even though they know that they have a language. They're not a language struggle. They're not learning, carrying encyclopedias around them. So where did that come from?
Yeah, it came from wanting to sound smart and look smart and essentially tell myself that looking smart and sounding smart eventually will make me smart.
Okay.
Because I felt like people, looked at me like, oh, you're not that smart. You got so many siblings. And the competition I had in my household was a little bit toxic because it was a lot of competition with my siblings. We're all very close in age and we're all competitive and we're all trying to win the attention of our parents, but especially our father, because he was that statue of like entrepreneur success and just he embodied all that and very sound, very smart person, outspoken. So I was always like, I want to say things to get my dad's attention.
Okay, so that was a driver for you, for your dad's respect, attention, approval. That was a big thing. Now, with your siblings, you said there was 5. Where are you in the 5?
I was just right before last. So
before last. Okay. Now, and you're all close in age.
We're all pretty close in age. Like
2 years
between the oldest and myself, it's like about an 8-year time.
Oh yeah, very close
gap. But everyone else maybe like 3-4 years.
Now, how was it in your household growing up? What kind of parenting style did they have? Your parents? What was it like with your siblings?
Parents, they had kept us very sheltered and, kind of fear tactics. And it was kind of rough, honestly. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say like it was a glamorous time, a good time all the time. And we had a lot of restrictions.
So they're very strict.
Yeah, we couldn't really game too much. We couldn't go as far out, like between the door and the opening the door and being across the street. That was as far as we were able to play. Make sure we were visible to my mom's naked eye and that she can hear us too. So we weren't really allowed to have too many friends. I think one of my mom's biggest quotes that still sticks with me was like, your best friend in life will be your pen and your paper.
Okay, that was like a belief that was instilled in you.
Yeah, so she's like, don't waste time with meaningless friendships. And so I always thought like the focus in life is like, just be ahead, get ahead and focus your energy on, getting smarter.
Did that stick? Did that stick all the way through elementary, junior high school, or did you start to like rebel?
I kind of rebelled because I thought like my background and my sign is like, I want to be a little defiant, right? Because I was like before last of the siblings. So I felt like I can kind of get away with things. And there's so much attention on the other siblings at times that I was like, I kind of want to rebel and kind of do against what my mom was saying and see how much further I can go and step out. And
I've noticed with stories like including mine, whenever there's that, because you said intimidation was there, right?
Yeah.
There was being strict, the rules. If you don't do this, or if not, then there's consequence and there's high standards, which is a good part to it. But it's feeling like, okay, I'm not good enough. I need to do better, and I need to push more. And I've noticed that with people who that kind of upbringing, they get to a point where they're like they don't feel like they got that approval or acceptance that they thought they were going to get, and it seems like it's never enough. So they just kind of, and they're looks like different things.
So I was definitely rebellious, but with kind of certain implications. Like I didn't go too far as to get into crazy trouble. I was a pretty, good kid for the most part. But for me, I thought the standards that my parents set up for us, like me having friends and stuff like that, I thought like that shouldn't be a big deal. Like I should be able to have friends. So for me, like defying what they said, it was like me making friends and playing around with the neighborhood kids.
That
and
was
like,
you being like, pushing the boundaries.
And I just always felt like I liked to get to know people, and I liked to hear stories in different languages from other kids and kind of like learn about where they came from and what they've been through, and kind of enjoyed like meeting people from different walks of life at an early age. That I always got turned on by that because I thought like, wow, it's so fascinating.
That's cool
to hear their stories. And
Sure.
I thought like I was special, but I hear something different and I'm like, that's cool. I want to learn that.
So now in school, when you're having these struggles, are you getting bullied by your siblings, by anybody in school?
Oh, that was a big problem for me. I think the biggest time in my life where I was really truly bullied was between 5th and 6th grade. I still have some of the trauma probably. And just remember, being made fun of and why I'm riding on the short bus in school because I was
because you were struggling.
I was incredibly talented with math and science, but English and those learning programs like grammar, I was really struggling with those things. So I was 100% bullied. I didn't have too many friends because I was kind of feeling insecure and subconscious about myself. So in the playground, the interactions, a lot of the times I was playing like tetherball or handball by myself or stuff like that. But I kind of found out that I'm still good in sports, right? That I had enough people wanting to challenge me and play with me against handball and say, hey, I'm the, champion today and things like that.
So that was your way to interact with, because your ability to talk and communicate wasn't that strong. And then you felt a little insecure because of that. They bullied you. So you started to shut down, but the sport created interactions and made some even friends, I'm sure, because now you're connecting through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that was my outlet and that was my, way of escaping and kind of having a good time out in the field and not worried too much.
What were the sports that you would play?
Kickball was a big one.
Yeah.
Baseball, softball, soccer, basketball.
Did you notice that was something that was getting you friends and like started doing it on purpose and even wanting to be like one of the best, like to get that approval from them?
I saw that and noticed that it was giving me the right kind of attention, and attention that was making me feel better about myself and confidence, and people saying like, wow, Fred, like you're super good at doing slices on the handball court, or you're good at taking 3-point shots when we were playing basketball and stuff like that. So I was really fast too. So I was always like doing quick little layups and good with my hand dribble skills, and eye-hand coordination was always good because early on, remember, I was cooking a lot and cutting things with detail. So it kind of made my attention a little bit faster. So I was able to put, things a little bit quicker together.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So you did get some of that bullying, but you started to kind of build yourself, your confidence, your interactions and friends through sports. And this is where you're starting like to push the boundaries, right? Like don't make friends, and now you're making friends here, but you're doing it through a safe way.
Yeah.
We're like, well, we're just playing the game, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
We're friends, so how did that develop? Did you start to be more social? Like what started to happen with you there?
I still, for the most part, kept to myself. But as I got older and kind of started gearing towards middle school, high school, I was really trying to get better at academics, and I was excelling, and I was actually finally good in English and, reading books. Like I was constantly going to public libraries and always challenging myself and always looking at what's the biggest book that I can grab out of here. So summers, I always
would you go by yourself?
Would go by myself. My mom would go along with me, or one of my siblings would go along with me as well. So that was really...
I'm just picturing you as this kid, like, okay, I'm going to go to the library and get an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
What's the biggest book I should like?
Yeah.
What freaking kid is thinking that way?
Lucky for me, I grew up in this city in Irvine since I was 5 years old practically. And there's a lot of resources and programs and things that you can take advantage of.
True.
So it was always fascinating for me to say, like, my parents came from a background where they lacked infrastructure, lacked education, right? Both my parents, I think my mom hardly graduated, middle school, and my dad was barely entering the 9th grade. So they didn't have that. So I always told myself, if it's one thing I can gain is knowledge, I would love to gain that and kind of share that with my family and friends.
So it's been a thing for you.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So now, okay, high school, is there any big shifts in your life? Is it pretty normal? What's going on during that
Yeah.
time?
So high school, I challenged myself a lot, and I was very talented. And one of the teachers, they found out, I guess, in middle school that I was like incredibly fast in the mile. I would be running like under 5 minutes. Like I was doing 4.5 minutes, and they're like, "This guy is incredibly fast." So those teachers and coaches to the high school I attended later on, Laguna Hills, they contacted the cross country team, Coach Dempsey. I still remember his name. What a wonderful coach and leader, and really great person that helped me develop myself and harness myself into a great young man. He came knocking on my family's door because my mom didn't want us involved in sports. We didn't really have healthcare. Couldn't afford it, right? You have a big family and stuff like that. Immigrants, they don't really know about local things like that, and having rights and having health benefits and health insurance is very critical.
So he came and said, "Hey, we want him to play."
After a month or two of being in school in PE, they saw that I'm just the fastest kid, period. And the coach basically came to my house and said, "I am going to force you to be on the cross country team, track and field team, and be on the team for the school." And I was already in varsity as a 9th grader, which was unheard of. So he came to my house, knocked on the door, and talked to my mom, and I was translating. My mom didn't speak any English. So I was speaking to my mom in Farsi Dari and saying, "Yeah, Coach Dempsey is asking for permission for me to join the cross country and track and field team." And my mom, in the beginning, she shut down the idea. She said, "So
and you're
sorry."
Saying yes, she's saying yes.
"Thank you for your time." And she dismissed it like, "No, I don't want you involved. Don't ask me. Go talk to your dad." And that was her way of saying like, "I don't want to deal with the stress and, have something happen to you. You get injured, something serious." She was always overprotective as a parent. So for her, it was like making sure I was healthy and I was okay.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of crying and begging, and finally got both my parents
negotiation
in the same room.
Skills.
and one of my other brothers, Frank, he's just a year older than me, so he was in the same school as me. He was just saying like, "This guy is the best."
So he was
to my parents. So he was vetting for me and kind of, telling my parents like, you should let him join. And basically a lot of deliberation, and they finally let me join. And next problem that came about was I couldn't afford the uniform. So it was like $100 for the uniform and some things and jackets or whatever. And I couldn't afford it. So like I told the coach, like I was nervous. I was like, I don't know how I can come up with this $150 check. So I was trying to come up with something. So I started bringing snacks and treats to school, and I started slanging them during recess and breaks. And I had a backpack filled with like chocolate bars, candy, and things like that.
And where did you buy those? Where did you get them to even begin with?
Well, I took them from my dad's bar. Like he had a lot of snacks.
You started that way.
Yeah. I took the product for free since I had no money in my piggy bank. So I thought, hey, we have a lot. We get a lot of friends and family and guests coming over our house very often. So I thought like, hey, there's a lot of stuff here, So let me just take this and see what happens. So I would take all that.
And how'd you come up with your prices?
I would just kind of see like when we would go to grocery stores, like a Snicker bar was like $1.50, or, I would round down to $1 because I'm like, hey, I didn't have to pay money for this, So I would sell it for $1, and people were like, wow, this guy sells treats for $1. Everything's $1, drinks, snacks, treats, whatever, all for $1. So I think after 1 week, I raised the money that I needed to buy the track outfit. So I told my parents, yeah, I got the cost of the clothes was covered, and they said, "Oh, okay."
That's hilarious. And they didn't notice all these things gone. Like they actually paid for your uniform through.
Yeah, they paid for my uniform through by means of selling treats at school.
Oh my goodness, but you thought of that and just went for it. Came up with the money. Now you're playing. Okay, and now what's happening from there? You're not working. This is in high school, 9th grade, doing track, still doing school, struggling but pushing through, getting it done.
Yeah.
You have friends, but it's more through sports. You're not really out there. You're focused on learning. You're developing yourself. Now what's happening from here?
Yeah. So from there, I'm just starting to continue doing what I'm doing, the good work, and challenge myself. And it was a lot of struggles. I mean, nothing ever became easier for me. It was just that I kept reading more and doing more and taking advantage of all the extra credit activities, going on all the field trips that I can go that were kind of low cost, you know, that I can afford to go to, challenging myself. And I made it a goal. One of my biggest fears was like getting attention or having to raise my hand at the teacher saying, "Hey, Fred, what do you think of this answer?" And I was always trying to avoid being the guy like getting attention or having to public speak in front of people. So that was one of my other issues, was like public speaking.
Because already speaking was difficult. So now to do it in front of all you guys where you're freaking judging me? Hell no.
Exactly. So I always kept pushing myself and trying to persevere, and finally got out of ESL and was like in normal classes. And I was like, wow, I'm praising myself because I'm like, okay, I've been putting in the work and I'm getting good results. And was like a average student. I was get like some A's and a lot of B's, and that was like me putting in the work. So it was still hard for me, but I just pushed myself.
And are you getting acceptance and approval from your dad now? Because that was a big driver.
Yes and no, because I was average in his eyes, so he didn't really see like, oh, this guy's an overachiever. He's doing so much, but he didn't really necessarily see like the grind and the late nights that I'm so up and constantly reading books and trying to develop my grammar skills and semantics, and, you know, trying to learn how to write essays properly without run-on sentences.
But you were able to like see the win yourself though. Like you were encouraging yourself.
I felt like for me, it was the small wins, you know, like the little successes that I got for me was like my driving force, because it was hard to keep yourself motivated when sometimes your own surroundings, your own siblings, your own dad was like, oh, okay, like in my eyes, you're really nothing. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing with yourself? So I just kept pushing myself and challenging myself and step up to the plate, you know, so it was not easy at all.
So now the end of the high school years, any big shifts there? You have any girlfriends? How is it in your home? Is your siblings, any big shifts with them that would bring any changes?
So in the shift in my house was that my oldest brother, who was like a big role model, and he was like a good example because he was one of the ones who, being the oldest, really had the toughest time, I would say, right? So he was challenged the most, expected the most, and having to accomplish the most. And I saw that he was really doing great, and he was really talented in track and field. And he was a good example because there was a lot of situations where, hadn't it been for him, I don't think I would have been able to be in track and field or do certain sports, because my parents, like I mentioned, were incredibly strict. So my oldest brother would compete in track and field events, and if there was a time he came after 5 o'clock at night, and he got beat up by my dad, because my dad was like, what are you doing after 5 o'clock? And he won all the medals and won all the trophies, but it was certain time, it was dinner time with the family, and he wasn't there. And he came like almost 6 p.m. at night, and my dad yelled and pulled him by the ear, and, you know, probably smacked him around a couple of times and said, don't you ever come after 5 o'clock again. So it was pretty intense.
Like, oh, okay.
Pretty intense. So seeing those kind of things happen, I was like, man, I hope I don't have to go through these things, you know. And he was a perfect example of challenging parents and just saying like, hey,
exactly the path that you're going to.
Yeah. So it was a lot of tough days and a lot of challenges, but had it been for my brother, I think he kind of made it easier for us, because like my parents later in life became a little bit more lenient. So high school, I got through the motions, you know, I graduated on time, had a great amount of medals and awards given to me. I ended up being like one of the 13th fastest kid in the nation for cross country. I was running, 4 minute, 13 minute mile, doing all these CIF challenges, and basically like a junior Olympian. You know, I was doing things that people, I think around when I was in 10th grade, I would be picked up from the campus, USC, and I would be going to their campus to train for like the 400 meter dash, the 800 meter dash. So they would pick me up twice a week, and I would go and train at the USC campus.
Wow.
So it was a lot of great opportunities that
That's
came
pretty
about.
cool.
Yeah.
Now, did you do anything with that? Did you take that to beyond like high school? Did you keep competing?
Yeah, I kept competing. I went through some health problems early on too. I ended up rupturing
how old
my
are you
hip.
now?
I'm about 16, 17 years old. Yeah,
You
just turned
messed up your
17
hip.
years old. Yeah. And that had a double hernia. So I ripped my intestine, had like an umbilical and inguinal hernia.
How?
And because I was doing the 200 high meter hurdles, and it was constantly having to jump really high and stretch really insanely far. Like you're taking amazing long strides, almost galloping like a horse, and you're jumping over this really high rail that's almost close to like 4 feet in height. And you're going as fast as you can and jumping over about 12 hurdles.
Over and over and over.
Over and over and over again. And I think I pushed my body, because I always liked that I was the fastest and challenging myself. And there was other good competitors with me. So I was always taking it one step further. And it got to a point where I got a really bad injury and basically lost a lot of opportunity, lost the scholarship.
Wow.
And it went from being up here to just being down there and just feeling like nothing.
Now what's going on with your parents, with you? Like, did you go into depression? Did you go into discouragement? Did you what went through your mind there?
It was very tough times. It was very challenging. I was definitely depressed. At the time, I didn't know what that meant. But I just felt so low. I felt worthless because I went from being the man like that everyone saw
identity.
as a superhero like Flash,
That's where you got your biggest sources of love, encouragement, and now boom, it's all gone.
Yeah, and now I'm just kind of like on the sidelines and watching people that were average, like being the stars of the track and field and cross country meets, and I'm like, man, what happened? And I quit the team after that, and I didn't want to be involved anymore. And the coaches were actually super disappointed because I let everyone down, including myself, because I just gave up altogether. I'm like, if I can't be number one,
then why
what's
am I
the
doing
point?
This? Yeah.
What's the point? Of competing.
And you couldn't fully recover from that, like physically, or what?
It was different. Like even though I did recover and had great training and great, coaching, I wasn't on the same level, on the high level that I could potentially wanted to see myself at.
Physically or mentally?
Physically and mentally, because I'm like, okay, I'm like 30 seconds slower for the mile was a big deal for me. Now I was running 4.5 minute miles. Now I'm running a 5 minute mile. To me, that was like a big letdown. Like I thought I was a failure.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, this is slow now.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though 5 minutes is incredible.
Yeah.
Even now at 37, I run like a 6 minute mile. But I think that's really slow.
Yeah.
Because I used to do 2 minutes to almost 2 minutes less than that.
Yeah.
So I'm like 6 minutes. What is that?
Freaking walking or
There's
what?
a lot of people that
jog?
can do that. Yeah. They're running 5-6 miles and they're running sub 6 minutes,
Yeah.
So
True.
I'm like,
So now you quit, right? So now what's the next part
so
of your
I quit
life?
sports and I challenge myself because I'm like, if I can't take sports where I want to take, I challenge myself academically. So I studied more, and at this time, computers are out, laptops are out. So I'm constantly learning about HTML, how to develop a website. So a side gig of mine became to like basically download antivirus, and a couple of neighbor friends and a couple of businesses that my dad was friends with. I would go intern and work with my dad and talk to his business partners and people he would work with and say, hey, can I like update your software? Can I do this? Can I do that? And I kind of like troubleshooted some things, and that became a part-time little gig for me, was like be kind of learning about their businesses, but also doing IT work and some basic things and learning like how to make money,
And this was just a side hustle that you just started to, it just became a business?
Yeah.
You're like, well, what if I do this? Would you pay me?
Yeah.
These were things that you just liked to do and had some knowledge and skill on, and you're like, would you pay me if I did it? You just started asking.
Yeah, I saw the need, and I was a really good active listener. So I saw like that they're talking about a frustration or issue, or that they couldn't really learn how to do certain updates on their computer. And I thought, oh, wow, this is an amazing opportunity right here. So at the time, early on, when I first did it, I didn't know that it's lucrative and there's money to be made. It was more like, hey, if you buy me XYZ or buy me lunch or buy me a PS2 console, I'm cool with that. That's a trade for me, you know? But then later, some people were like, Freddie, how much can I pay you for your time today? And I was like, wow.
I can put a number on it?
I get to choose? So I went around asking people in the industry, like, hey, what do you normally charge for your IT work? And they would tell me like $50, $60 an hour. And I'm like, wow, I did 4 hours worth of work. That could be a couple $100.
Yeah.
So I took it a little bit more seriously and challenged myself to learn more about the industry.
You got some more encyclopedias.
Yeah, I got some more encyclopedias and kind of read about programming, how to develop basic websites for people and do like some advertising for certain industries. Like my father, he comes from a background of being an entrepreneur, doing import exporting, but then he was mainly doing wholesaling of automobiles. So back in 96, 97, he became the biggest wholesaler for Cal Worthington in Long Beach. So he would be selling about 200-300 Crown Victorias, Tauruses, Ford Escorts. And it was a pretty big opportunity to kind of learn and get involved with him and go into the industries he was going to, which was like going into auctions and bidding on cars and kind of being in that fast-paced hustle environment and just taking notes and just always learning certain softwares. One of them at the time early on was Kelley Blue Book. That was early released.
Okay.
And my dad didn't really know how to download the tools. And basically this is an aid that you would use to implement into the auctions. Like you're looking at how much the value of the car is in the auction versus like retail, but also knowing how low to buy the cars. It was called the MMR, the fair market value for the cars in the auction. So my dad would really be a talented car buyer and know how to in turn wholesale it to another dealer.
But you started to bring the tech into it, to read data, to prepare him for that. Mm-hmm. You saw another need.
Big need, yeah. Big need.
So that became like a business where you're building that with him, or?
Yes and no. It was more like a hobby passion that I turned into a little bit of a business, but also felt like my dad was very strict. So I was like, I don't want to get too involved with him, you know? So I just kind of like knew to do a little bit to get his attention, but too much. He was a little bit passive aggressive. So he had a very short attention span and very short like patience too. So you can only give him little bit at a time.
Okay. So then where did you go from there? So now, and where's your mom in this? Your siblings?
My mom is raising the kids. She's a housewife and, you know, home cooker. So she's always cooking food, bringing us to sporting events, making sure we got all our needs met, like going to school shopping, cooking our food for us, meal prepping. A lot of relatives would always come over our house. So she was always like, you know, making sure she was attending to all the events and the weddings and the parties and different siblings. So it was like different expectations. And my oldest brother was just getting married. So there's a lot of politics from both sides and basically bringing the families together. A lot of opportunities there to kind of like network and meet other cool family members and get our family now grew and got bigger. So there was a lot of events constantly going on in our house. We grew up in a household where
it's like you're like the household where everybody went. Like
my parents were entertainers. Like the movie Great Gatsby. Like you can think of our house as like a live musicians every weekend, like music being played, buffet of food being cooked, and it was just like we loved the arts and entertainment. So my dad and parents both were big at like bringing the community together and like relatives from Afghanistan coming. Like we kind of wanted to show them the ropes. Like my mom, she started hustling on the side and became like a nanny for like all the little kids in my school. Like she would offer the parents like, hey, daycare services, things like that. They would come to our house the kids would get picked up by my mom, and then they would come to our house, and she would like nurture them, feed them, make sure homework time we're all there, and give us a little time to go outside and play together.
Wow, this was another way of bringing friends to you, so you didn't have to go anywhere else.
Exactly. Yeah. So
she was hustling. Well, she knew she had to be there at the home. That was her responsibility, and she wanted to bring more value. So saw a need and started to meet it. So all of you guys have this like entrepreneurship mindset, taking responsibility. Okay, I see something here, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah, definitely from both my parents, because like I always early on saw my mom like making us clothes, and that later drove one of the businesses I had was like a clothing apparel design company, where in high school towards the end, I didn't mention one of the things I was doing during the time when I wasn't doing track and field for over a year was basically started silk screening and designing t-shirts.
Okay.
And I would make them in bulk because one of my older brother's friends, he had a business at the Laguna Hills Mall, which was like a successful hat business and printing t-shirts and designs for local businesses or people. And I made a deal with this guy. I was able to buy t-shirts in bulk and hats in bulk for like maybe close to $2-3 at the time, and give him some designs that I created. And we were able to put that on a shirt or a hat. And I did some, and I brought it to school where I would wear some stuff. So it became like the thing where I was selling candy, but now later it became selling t-shirts and hats from my backpack. And
but you're wearing it, you're demonstrating.
I'm wearing it, and people are like, "Where is this from? Could I get this from PacSun, Quicksilver? Like, where is it?"
In my backpack.
Yeah, because I had a lot of friends that were like still like athletes, like pro BMXers and skateboarders. There's a local one I can talk about. His name is Ryan Sheckler. He's like a world-renowned Olympian in the sport of skateboarding. He's incredibly talented. And basically, I started like taking pictures and like visually learning like the tricks that he would do, like cool little kick flips and, Healy and things like that, that I would take pictures of this designs and I would put it on t-shirts. And that became like viral at the time with school, and like the whole school started buying my merchandise. And then I got the attention from the school yearbook, and they asked me to help with their designs for like the year that I was going to be in the yearbook too.
Wow.
So it became a real business, but I was having a good time and being able to make passive income and learn about the hustle. And
this is, you're how old at this point?
At this point, I'm like junior and basically senior in high school. Yeah. So I'm 16 years old.
So did that something that you kept building, or did it shift to something else?
Yeah. So I later had to stop because I received a cease and desist letter from a company in Europe using the same name that I had at the time called Dubious Apparel. And the first part of the name was dubious, and it was like the DUBEUS, but then there's like umlaut and certain accent marks on the word. That was basically like a company, a medical device company in Europe at the time. And they said, hey, you can no longer use this word. Please remove it from all of your, products and things like that. Otherwise, you owe us $100,000. Long story short, I had to cancel on that.
Then you didn't move to a different type or call it something else?
Well, because I didn't know so much about the patents and all those things that I'm supposed to have to retain those names. I got a little scared.
So you just stopped doing it overall?
So I stopped doing it altogether. And I transitioned at this time. I had a friend who owned a cell phone store. And I started to get into sales with him. He started giving me some phones to sell. And I was really good at the computer stuff. So he asked me to help him build the infrastructure and the tools to be able to resell things online early on. So before Amazon, drop shipping, that's all a big thing, like e-commerce and Shopify. Early on was eBay was like the big thing,
Yeah.
So I started to take pictures, products of like the cell phones and extra chargers and things like that.
And then just posting it up there.
And post it up. And later on, Craigslist came out. So I started to reshare and put things on that. Some local magazine companies like Recycler at the time was a big one. Before like Craigslist was becoming a thing, I would put money in the local ads and say, hey, like cell phones for sale and things like that. And just started advertising it on eBay later. and it just became a big thing. Like I think at some point I was getting to maybe close to like $4,000 a day.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was barely turning 18.
Man, that's money.
I got attention from my dad because I was the first one in the household to buy my own car.
Got your attention now.
You know, my dad was also a very generous man. So he also wanted to, like, when we were 16, 17, like when we achieved certain milestones, like he wanted to award us and be helpful. So one of my brothers had the golden spoon. He's just a year older than me, but he got that Mustang GT when he barely had his license at 16 because he was that like academic student, you know, and athletic and cool and funny, and he was like all the things that I aspired to want to be, you know. Even though we're a year apart, he skipped. So by the time I was like 9th, 10th grade, he went from 10th grade to going to Berkeley. So he had skipped. So like I mentioned to you, our house was incredibly competitive. So seeing that, I still felt worthless. Like, man, well, I'm still doing good, but I'm not doing good enough, right? So seeing that happen next to me.
Because you were basing it on the academic part.
Yeah, put a chip on my shoulder. So when I was like, my hustle was like, I'm not, you know, the most athletic kid anymore. I'm not the smartest kid or whatever, at least in my household. But I was good at sales. Like I learned that, man, I'm good at making money and I can sell these cell phones and also I can be independent from mom and dad. But I still lived under the same roof, you know, because I enjoy community and being a part of the family. And mom's food is, you know, the best food you can ask for. And at 18, I bought my like first M3 and, you know, paid off and was able to afford my own insurance. And this is the first time where my dad actually came up to me, and I never seen my dad cry, but he cried and he came up to me and he said, "Son, I'm very proud of you. And one thing I want to tell you is that I respect you a lot because I'm getting the chills saying this right now. It's like, I've never had you ask for anything. I've never had you ask for anything.
You just did, you made it happen. And obviously what the other ones, they asked.
Oh yeah.
And here you were just trying to get his acceptance, and he's looking at you like, wow, he doesn't even ask for anything. He's good then.
Exactly. Yeah, so it was a nice day for me. I felt really good about myself, you know. And it's something nice to hear from the guy that you want the most acceptance from, right? So it was like, yeah, I felt like I made it. Like this is it for me, you know.
That's amazing. Now from there, okay, now you're doing well there. You get some acceptance. Your family's doing good as well. They're doing, you know, other things, but they're doing great. Now what?
So those things happen, and I'm kind of living the fast life and, you know, spending money. And I was not responsible, to be honest, because I didn't have that upbringing where my parents taught us like, hey, this is bookkeeping. Hey, this is accounting. Hey, this is how you open up a savings account, bank account, and a Roth, you know, IRA.
You're like, just coming in and going out.
Taught anything. I just thought like I have a lot of cash in my hand and I look super wealthy and I have a lot of friends now. And I'm getting a whole lot of attention from the girls, and I just felt really cool. So it kind of got to my head, you know. So I'm being a little bit careless and reckless. And at that time, I'm being, you know, invited to 21 and over clubs and bars, restaurants, because I'm just tipping the valet and the security guard, and they look the other way. You know, they let me in these high scale, you know, restaurants and bars and nightclubs, and I wasn't even 21. I was already living that life. So I'm kind of being a bad person in my life. I thought like I'm kind of making bad decisions, kind of on a bad path, like going out every day, trying to go on dates every day.
Just
like
partying, spending money.
Yeah, just being young and reckless, just like any other 18-year-old would be, you know?
Especially with money. It makes things a lot easier.
Oh yeah. It makes making decisions easier and making bad decisions easier, you know? And spending a lot of money doing those things. So didn't go to school at the time. I took some time off because I'm like, why would I need to go to school, right? So I didn't get accepted into a university. I got, you know, scholarship was lost from all the injuries I sustained basically towards the end of my high school track and field events and cross country time. I had some opportunities. I thought early on that I was going to get into USC because I was always training with them and they scouted me early on. But when I sustained those injuries, basically they dropped everything. So they're like, this guy is, you know, not going to do us any good. So that was another reason why I was just like, I give up on sports and all that stuff and started getting into hustling and selling cell phones and the t-shirts. Transitioned to kind of going out all the time and not doing too much. And I saw that my brother Frank up in the Bay Area at this time, he's graduated from Berkeley. He's only like 19 years old and he's involved in a startup technology company in Berkeley. And they were getting the likes of Facebook, Twitter at the time, Google, and certain big companies, WhatsApp, and they were like trending for a while. They created some tools that were later bought by big startups like WhatsApp. They did like a big merger with WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. And today they're publicly acquired by Google. So I just saw like the gap between me and him and just being a year apart. And I thought like, wow, his success is a lot due to being in school and being involved in the startup thing. So I thought to myself, maybe I want to think about school again. So I was 18, 19 years old and, you know, just been working. So I was getting close to turning 20 and I thought to myself, like, maybe I want to take a chance and go back to school. So at the time I attended Irvine Valley College, taking some prerequisites and some basic courses, you know, refreshers. And I saw like, wow, I'm still pretty good in school. Like I did a placement exam and I got into like a lot of the higher, you know, math classes, science classes. And I thought like, okay, then I'll give this a chance.
Nice.
So I enrolled in school and I still had money. So I'm able to afford to pay for my own tuition and things like that. Because at this point, it was my choice. Like my parents never really forced me to say, hey, you have to go to university. You have to do this. My parents said, in life, you make your choices when you're old enough.
But that was what all your other siblings did though. So it was like,
yeah. So
what was pushed?
By the time it got to me, it was like either you work super hard full time or you go to school and make something of yourself, doctor, lawyer, attorney, something of that caliber. Yeah. And I just decided, okay, maybe I want to go back to school. I got enrolled, took some basic courses, and I'm still working like 2-3 jobs, hustling on the side. At the time, I'm like still doing the cell phone sales. I got a full-time job at Best Buy as well. And just because I was a geek too, I like technology and I was always into home theater. So I learned about all the different television sets. And at the time,
audio,
plasma was just becoming a thing and got released. And I was doing that. And I was also like working on weekends with my dad at the car dealership, washing cars, detailing cars, and helping put ads for selling cars. So I was still doing all my little hustles and doing my thing. And then I started to kind of distance myself from making money more. And I just kind of evolved into telling myself like, I can really turn this education thing into something real big. So after about a year and a half of attending IVC, one of my aunts, she's like a head counselor at Irvine Valley College, Aunt Mina. And shout out to my aunt. She kind of helped me stay the course. And she's like, hey, Freddie, I would encourage you to maybe spend less time worried about making money. She's like, money and jobs is always going to come. Those opportunities will always present themselves. But
focus and finish here.
If you hone in on this education thing, which you are more than capable of, you will take this somewhere. And I quote her on this because that's literally what happened to me, you know. I later got accepted to UCLA, Cal Berkeley, UCI, a lot of prestigious schools. And my parents were still relatively strict, you know, so they didn't want me to like relocate out of state or to go into another county really far away.
They want you to stay close, of course.
So basically they told me like, oh, you have to go to UCI because we live in Irvine. You can commute from school. So between you and me, I lied to my parents and told them that I didn't get into any of those schools that were close to the house, like Fullerton and Cal State Long Beach. And I told them that the only one I got accepted to was UC Riverside, so that I can possibly say it's close enough, but far enough where they would give me an opportunity. And at this time, I'm just barely 21, you know, and begging my parents, pleading with them, hey guys, like I got a full scholarship to UCR. So this wasn't a sports scholarship. This was an academic scholarship that I got. So more than 90%, more than 90% of my academics were going to be paid for to attend the University of Riverside. And it was a very difficult, award
You
to
earned
receive.
that.
And I earned it because I put in the work, And the first quarter, my parents, they forced me to stay at home. And then they saw that it was really taking away from my focus. And I'm stuck in traffic 4 hours a day, driving 2 hours, coming back 2 hours. So it caused a lot of stress. And I told my parents, like, I'm crying to my mom, saying, Mom, I don't know if I can do this. This is so challenging. I go to school for 8 hours a day, and then I'm driving for 2 hours and driving for 2 hours,
Drive will get you.
10 plus hours a day. Like, I'm burned out. I would come home and I would just crash out, just be passed out, barely eating dinner. And just finally, my parents saw like that I really have everything together and I'm really trying to do this university thing. So my dad wrote me a little check like for $800. And he said, hey, this, we'll get you on your feet. Like, go find an apartment. I'm giving you the okay to go to Riverside and to live on campus, So
You're like,
finally, my prayers have been answered. And the next quarter, I'm able to go to the University of California, Riverside and live like in an off-campus housing next to the university. The apartment housing was called Falkirk, and that was like the start of everything for me and making cool relationships with the RAs and the students, that were attending the campus. And it was an amazing experience. It was like my first time adulting, living on my own and understanding like how to be on my own.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's a big shift in your life where, now, you're experiencing life outside your home. You've been so sheltered and protected and, make sure that you have everything and even with all your siblings, right? But now here you are in a freaking whole different world.
Yeah.
New friends and whole new environment. And I'm sure you're excited about it. It's like, freedom.
Yeah.
Now you don't have that drive. Now you're not getting drained by that. So now you're fully focused there. How did you do in school? What did you do with that?
Yeah.
And where did business go at this point?
Yeah, great question. So how did it go with school was because I was on a academic scholarship and I already got out of my system, the partying and the going out already all at 18, 19. So I thought this is a very special opportunity that I've been presented with. And I have to maintain over a 3.5 GPA to stay on the scholarship.
Yeah.
So I knew that I didn't want to take advantage of going out and messing around all the time. It was there. At this point, I was mature enough to comprehend and understand this university is pretty big. There's a lot of opportunities. It's a big party school, right? It's kind of in the middle of nowhere in the Inland Empire in Riverside off of University Avenue. The school didn't have, I didn't know till later, I guess my second quarter, the university doesn't have a football team. So they have like soccer, softball, baseball, soccer, and all that other stuff. But they didn't have football. So as much as I got excited to attend that university, I was still kind of upset. Like, oh, this is not going to be the biggest party school because they don't have the football team. So then I knew in the back of my mind, like, okay, so I really shouldn't be messing around, So I took advantage of making friendships with all of the teacher assistants, university faculty members and professors. So I just became more immersed in the schoolwork and told myself, like, I really want to make a profession out of this and excel and take this to the next level. So I was still very shy. Like, I still didn't like that teachers would sometimes point something out and say, hey, Fred, you have an answer for this question. And I'd be like, there's 300 students. I don't want to have the spotlight on me, right? Because I'm like more introverted. I grew up in a big household, but I didn't like to sometimes, have to interact. And, I was a little shy and thought like people are going to judge me or something wrong with me.
Especially with the upbringing of how you struggled speaking.
So being in that big household, I always thought like, oh, it's easier for me to dodge things because maybe people aren't really focusing on me. But once they did put the spotlight on me, I was like big eyes and just, confused and like kind of like stuttering and just didn't, how to react and shy kid. But the university, there were some courses I took on public speaking and I made my fear into something that I said, hey, take it as a challenge, that
it's awesome. You have this pattern of seeing a weakness or a problem and you taking responsibility for it and like, okay, I got to just do something about it. Rather than complaining, becoming a victim, you have this pattern of like, okay, I need this. Let me just do it. Let me just make this happen. Let me just figure this out. And that's pretty good.
Yeah, one of the lessons my father was kind of implementing was like, in life, either you're a victim or you're a victor. You know, there's always opportunity, so be an opportunist. You know, so that kind of stuck with me. So I always told myself, like, don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't be that pity guy or talk about your past and sound all sad about why you failed in track and field or why you failed in early on with your education. And I could have given up and just kept working and doing sales, and I was doing great, you know, making over $200,000-$300,000 when I was like 18, right? And making $4 or $5 grand a day, and a lot of times. But I just felt like that's not everything in life. And I just always thought like, wow, my brother later went to University of Berkeley and he was doing really good things and big things and networking and building on in life. And early on got married and met a beautiful lady in campus, and his life was just amazing. And I was like, man, I aspire to be better. Like what he has is what I have a vision for. And I always thought there's more to life than just making meaningless money and doing something that didn't really make me feel whole, right? Like I knew I was good with sales and that I'm making money out of it, but it was something like that. I was like, okay, I don't want to be stuck working at Best Buy, and, you know, working odd jobs and doing sales and making good money. I felt like I want to do a little bit more than that. So in the university, my major was psychology.
I'm going to turn the air on more.
Yeah.
If I keep going, I'm just going to turn on.
Yeah. So in the university, my major was psychology and neuroscience. So I ended up double majoring. And I thought like,
from somebody who struggled in school, freaking stepped it up.
Yeah, because I was still somewhat decent with math and science. So those were my good proving points with the professors. So the point I was making to circle back was like a challenge I made because I was a very, very big introvert was like, I told myself every quarter, my goal is that the teachers know me on a first name basis because there's 300-400 kids. So who am I to stand out? So every lecture or discussion that I had, I always wrote like 2-3 questions that I thought were going to be impactful finally, and that would get their attention. So, and make the teacher kind of, you know,
notice you,
think a little bit more too critically, right? Not just ask him like a basic question that generally people ask. It was more like a very specific question to make him more like, wow, now this is why I'm a professor.
Question. Yeah.
A critical question, a smart question that had them really engaged and like they're talking to me and they would say, wow, Fred, that's a wonderful question. Like, this is really good. And then other people would appreciate that and be like, that's the question I wish I knew how to ask. And I would ask those certain questions or the uncomfortable questions that classmates felt like it would be a stupid question. This was your strategy, though.
You were doing this on purpose, always having 3.
And always after the lectures ended, people usually scurry off and they run off to grab lunch or go to the next class. And if I had an extra minute, I would take note and go up to the professor and shake their hand and say, thank you for teaching this subject matter today. I thought it was XYZ and it was very fascinating. Every time before midterms and finals, I made it a point to go into that teacher's office hours and to ask like, hey, I'm getting really worried. I got really bad anxiety for test taking. I was really bad at test taking too. Mm-hmm. When it came to like multiple choice, my brain would just pause and draw a blank, even though I spent hours studying the material, all that stuff. Yeah. I just had really bad test taking anxiety. And I would make a point of it by going into the office hours and asking the professor, hey, what kind of detailed questions you're going to ask? What are you going to have short answers?
To try to ease your anxiety.
Choice? And the teachers knew I was so great at asking amazing questions that sometimes they would ask me to review the actual exam that we're going to be having that week. And
I'm like, giving you the exam, so you're
and I'm
to
like,
look at it before?
I'm getting this privileged like information that is going to be on the exam. Like I felt so special, and I'm like, this is a major responsibility. Like he's asking me to look over some questions because he knew that I was really great, for example, at asking certain questions that would make people think more critically.
Yeah.
For like some neuroscience or psychology classes that you have to really learn how to think more in detail. So they would ask me to review certain questions on the exam, and I'm like, oh my God, here I am. and I was really good at memorizing things, and I had a photographic memory. So when I saw the exam once or twice, reading over
You
the
knew it
questions,
already.
I pretty much 100% of the time knew what questions were going to be asked on the exam.
Yeah, you're the one that approved them.
So it was an amazing, big responsibility and opportunity. So I now learned to become a better test taker because I already knew what questions to expect and not over memorize or over read the different chapters that I didn't.
Yeah, you don't
need
have to.
bother.
You don't even have to read or anything. You have the freaking questions
Yeah.
of the test right
So when we would have study groups, so I would tell them like what to focus on without saying like that I'm getting this privileged information, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to lose that respect from the professor, like knowing that they're honoring me with this super big,
there. Nice.
piece of material that is going to be on the exam that determines people failing out of college or, graduating college,
Wow. Okay, so now you go through that. When I know you had some health issues, when do you go through your health issues? Is it around this time?
Yeah, so later on, so maybe almost 2 years later, so I transfer in as a junior and I'm attending the University of California, Riverside. And then maybe about 2.5, so closer towards the end of my, me finishing up the university and finding out like I'm getting into the master's program to do like continue pursuing neuroscience and psychology. I thought in my mind, I want to, maybe get my doctor's degree and get my PhD in psychology. Like I thought like I'm good with questions. I'm good with like interacting.
Yeah.
And I've always loved people. Basically, I wanted to become a psychologist and took my academics like sports. I wanted to, be on high level performer. And basically, my health started taking a turn because I'm overworking, I'm overstressing, I'm overstudying. I'm compromising a lot of sleep because I would be on campus maybe 14 hours on average.
Oh.
I was like a geek. I would just, once classes and lectures were over, I would go into office hours. And once office hours were over, I would go back into the library. And I kind of am neglecting my physical health and mental health because I'm not really balancing out, like having gym time and having friend time.
You were just all about academics, your brain.
All about academics.
Wow.
Hardly ate. Maybe I was averaging maybe one meal a day.
So you were like addicted to it almost.
I became addicted to the education life and just trying to excel. And I thought like my brother is a good example of, excelling in life and being an entrepreneur, but educated person who graduated from Berkeley, started a successful technology company that was publicly traded to Google for $500 million. And I was like, man, I want to do it.
That's my standard that I have to hit.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a very big deal to me, and I was he's always been my best friend, right? So for me, it was like, man, this is so cool. Like I'm so close to him, like this is possible for me. So I saw the endless possibilities of where his life perplexed to that. I thought like this is always something that I want to aspire to.
Yeah.
So seeing all that happening, there are some things that happened with my health. I was not able to sleep. I wasn't able to eat right, and got into the master's program. So I'm constantly like challenging myself and losing a lot of sleep and in my studies, late at night, burning the midnight oil, as they say. And I started to notice like I'm having a lot of stomach problems and I'm putting these off, right? I was kind of in denial about it and not really paying attention to it, but my body was really communicating with me and telling me there's things wrong. I would get headaches, migraines, stomach aches, nausea, vomiting.
Just
happened?
Like for no reason every day or what?
Yeah. So it became something where finally after 2 weeks, I gauged it. Like you're saying, almost every day I was throwing up. Almost every day I had a headache. And I'm just noticing like I'm slower. My energy levels are lower. Like I'm more restless. So I'm having to sleep throughout the day. It got to a point where I'm missing classes now. Professors, teachers are concerned. They're saying, Fred, like you haven't showed up to class. And it got to a point where I think I had to reschedule my midterms because I was just so out of it. And I got to a point where I think for like more than a week, I couldn't pee or poop. And then
that becomes dangerous.
I finally called my sister who lived in Corona. She was relatively close to the university I'm attending. And I'm like, hey, sis, Sophia, can you come and get me from my apartment? And she comes and picks me up from the apartment over at Falkirk next to the university.
and she brings me to like Riverside County Hospital, and they're running a bunch of tests, and they just give me some painkillers, and nothing works. The opioids, the painkillers, the morphine they injected me with, I felt like the pain wasn't leaving. So they're running certain tests, and I think it was a Thursday or Friday, and they said, hey, we're gonna have you go to, I think, UCLA and UCI. They said, we're gonna schedule a biopsy for you. So they got authorization from the insurance. Luckily for me that I'm a university student, so I didn't have the stress, and I'm on a scholarship, so I didn't have to have the stress of like, oh my God, the burden of the finance. How can I afford this hospital bill? It was more like the university said everything's being covered through the university insurance.
Wow.
So let's run all these tests on you.
Amazing.
So I'm like allowing them to run all these tests on me. And a couple days go by, and they get back to me from UCI and UCLA, and they both had the same exact reports, and basically saying like, hey, and they didn't sugarcoat it. You know, I was just surprised and taken aback. They just laid it out to me. They said, hey, Freddie, you have stage 4 cancer. That's what's been going on with you. And I'm basically, figuratively drop dead. I'm just speechless. I don't know how to take this. I'm in complete denial.
Stage 4 cancer. Just
he laid it out to me, and the way he said it, I think it was his bad, because the tone was like,
I hear this a lot.
I felt like he was a game show host and talking to me like a contestant and making me feel like I won something.
You got stage 4
you
cancer.
have stage 4 cancer. How do you feel?
And that's not
and I'm
all.
like, and
You're going to die.
And to be honest with you, I couldn't hold myself back. So I started swearing at him and saying, what the F are you talking about? What are you talking about? I got in his face, actually. I'm like, what are you talking about? Dog, you crazy? You losing your mind?
Wow.
Started swearing at him, cussing at him. And he's like, hey, I'm sorry. You know, he didn't really know how to react, and he didn't really know like to maybe give this guy a hug or anything. My sister is just in the corner crying hysterically. And I basically, after the appointment, I told my sister, Sophia, I'm like, one thing I'm going to tell you right now is this is my life and this is my decision, but I also do not want you to share this information with anyone. So she held this information for like more than a week or two, and she respected my privacy, my decision that I didn't want to tell mom and dad and tell other siblings. And basically...
Why didn't you want to tell them?
Because I felt like it was a burden, right?
Okay.
It's like something heavy, and
yeah.
I already feel like my mom is overprotective, and my dad is kind of more, you know, import export, and he was kind of coming and going from Afghanistan and doing his thing. So I was like, oh, he's really not around. My mom is just working hard and raising, you know, all of us. And I was like, I don't want to burden her and tell her this heavy information, you know? So I come back home. It was basically summer of 2011. And basically I come back home, just acting like nothing happened. My sister goes back to Corona. She's doing her thing, and she's like calling and worried about me. And she's like, so what are you going to do? And I told her I have a plan. Like, I'm going to start, you know, maybe considering getting treatment or something. Like I'll weigh in my options and see what's going on. And then about 2-3 days go by. My mom comes into my room like 6 o'clock in the morning. And like I mentioned, she doesn't really speak any English. So she's coming into my room, bawling, crying on her knees, saying, I'm having dreams about you. And I'm translating this in English, that there's something in your body. There's something wrong with you. Just please tell me what's going on with you. And at this point, I couldn't help.
She was woken up by a dream.
But to break down and cry and join her and tell her, Mom, I found out I have cancer. And she kind of broke down a little bit more, but she stopped and caught herself and said, like, I need to be a mom. I need to be strong for my son. And she said, you know what? We'll get through this together. You're not alone. Whatever you need to do, surgeries, we'll start together. We'll do it. Whatever they tell you to do, just listen to the doctors and we'll get this going. So I felt like a big relief. And finally, I just told her, thank you, Mom. Like, I didn't want to tell you this because, like, I thought it's just going to break you, you know? And she's like, why? Like, I'm your mom. Like, this is why
Wow.
I'm here. This is what I was made for, to protect you, to nurture you, and to care for you. So I was able to confide in her. But I told her, Mom, I don't want you to say anything to everyone else because I'll look like a loser. Like, they're going to look at me like I'm nothing. And I don't know. I just felt like I felt so weak and vulnerable. And I just never wanted to look at myself like the victim or be treated as a victim. So I kind of, you know, held my things together, and I just told myself, okay, I'm going to start my journey. And this is what I'm faced with every day. Is I started to do chemotherapy, radiation, had like a number of surgeries, and I was being seen at UCI
And
Douglas.
what kind of cancer is it?
It was
What was it?
testicular cancer, but it was very aggressive and metastasized over 4 point something centimeters and spread to my liver, pancreas, lymph nodes. Yeah, so it was pretty aggressive, and they staged it at 4, as I mentioned, and they basically told me like chemotherapy, radiation may not even do a thing to you. It's better that we send you to a hospice. So the
Wow.
doctors,
Like, go
everyone
home
wrote
and
me
die.
off. Yeah, the oncologist, the urologist, they all wrote me off. They said like, this guy is just number of couple days, months, maybe 6 months we'll give him if he has to live. I just kicked into a different kind of mindset. I just felt like I got to bet on myself. I'm like, if it's anything that I'm going to do, I'm going to bet on myself right now the most. So I'm implementing dietary supplements, fresh juices that my mom would bring me, fresh food she would bring me, combination of positive thinking and talking to like different patients. And
Yeah.
So
What was that? How long was that process?
it was a couple of years, almost about 3 years of battling. I temporarily went
Wow.
into remission for about 6 months. And I'm back home. So they stopped the chemotherapy, they stopped the radiation, they stopped the surgeries. Because all those steroids, medications they give you, my immunity got so low. My blood count dropped below a normal amount. So they were very scared. So they said, we're going to stop everything. Somehow they cleared me and said that I'm in remission. So meaning that I'm cancer free temporarily. But during this time, Richard, I felt like I was more sick. I felt more nauseous. I felt more weak. And I'm like, something doesn't feel right about this Dr. Dash telling me that I'm in remission. I just didn't believe it. To be honest with you, I didn't believe it. And I felt maybe
Because it didn't feel like it.
this is the hospital trying to just sign off on me and tell me, hey, they tapped out on the money. And it became a financial thing because they knew they were getting money from the university and from the insurances that I had in place through being a university student, that they started threatening me and saying, and I would tell them, hey guys, I don't feel better. Like, let's run some more tests and yada, yada, yada. So I'm getting like 107, 106 fevers, like for 2-3 nights. I'm like on my deathbed back home after like just less than 6 months. So my mom is going into my room saying, Freddie, like you don't look good. Something's wrong. You're having fevers every night. We get seen at a local hospital, Hoag, because it's the closest one next to my house, off of Sand Canyon and Alton. So they run a bunch of tests and CTs, and they're telling me, this doctor told you you're in remission. That's not true. They said your tumor, whatever we see, has metastasized, even 1 centimeter bigger than previous. They took all those CTs and exams, sent it back to UCI Douglas Hospital. The hospital, Hoag, filed a medical board complaint against the urologist, Dr. Dash, and the medical staff. And maybe like 2-3 doctors got relocated. 1 or 2 nurses got fired because they were all a part of this little
Malpractice.
this lie. Yeah. So even the head urologist from
Playing with your freaking life.
yeah, working with me, we had become friends. Like I had his cell phone number and personal information. He came over to our house, had dinner with my family. So it went from that to just ghosting me. And I'm like, hey, Dr. Dash, I'm not hearing from you. What's going on? This and that. Next thing you know, one of the nurse practitioners at UCI, Nurse Christina, she's like, Freddie, Dr. Dash has been relocated. He's no longer here. And I'm like, under what grounds? And they were not at liberty to explain what happened. They just said, oh, yeah, he's in Georgia, Atlanta right now.
That's malpractice. He can't practice here anymore. He has to go there.
So finally, UCI got word that they made a false claim and that they told me that I was in remission when that never had been the case. So I was actually getting more sick and closer to my deathbed. And finally, my mom, she was proactive, and she's like, so what are you guys going to do? You know, like, we don't want to sue you guys. We don't want no drama.
Fix it.
Just take my son back in the hospital. So after they made several attempts to try to collect money from us, because there's a number of CT exams that they said that the insurance can cover. Like, after that, you have to pay $40,000 and this and that. So word got to my dad, and he's in Afghanistan and starting businesses, doing his thing, that, hey, my dad needs to give up this or sell this, or $45,000 for this exam, $400,000 for this surgery.
Man.
It just all became costly, and the hospital was threatening our, family, saying, hey, if you don't come up with this money, we got to stop seeking treatment for your son. So after fighting and all those medical claims and getting finally to the hospital, they basically dropped all of the financial stuff, and they said, hey, we're no longer going to ask you to pay any money. We're going to continue treatment with you. So like a couple of weeks later, they started me back on the chemotherapy, radiation, and rolled out the red carpet. And I'm getting this, Mr. Nawabi, can I get you this?
There
Mr.
was
Nawabi,
some
can
big
you
trouble
get
that was developing there.
So the biggest lesson from that was I became like that patient back at the hospital. But it was a stepping stone for the hospital, because it gave it an opportunity to have better patient advocacy. So I was kind of like the scapegoat for the hospital, because they stepped up their status quo,
which
and
was
they're
a
able
blessing
to
for
improve
other
practices.
people that came in, and
the level of patient care increased. Nurses administration coming in there, they had certain people like dietitians come in there, and certain psychologists come into the floor and ask you, hey, how is your mental health? How do you feel about this? So there's certain programs that came about because of what the negligence that I was dealing with. So the level of patient care had tremendously improved. And I'm so glad that I was a part of the problem and a part of the solution.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And I think that's a big reason why you're able to overcome like a lot of these things, is because of that mindset of like, being so positive, being grateful, and not that you feel like it. It's just a decision that you're making, have a better perspective, generating, like being able to see past the problem into like, even to the point where it's not a problem. Like, okay, where's the opportunity? Where's the potential? Where's the solution? Where's the possibility, rather than where's the problem? So I think that's a very powerful thing you have in your mindset there. And I want to like applaud it. That's amazing. And I thank God for saving your life, during these times, and using it to do something good in the hospital, right? So now, how long did it take because obviously you're still here and you're still alive. Yeah. Thank you, God. So how long did it take for you to heal, to overcome that? And I know that is what kind of positioned you to start how I met you through your deli, right? Because you're more health conscious. Yeah. So let's get to that part now.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of years after basically finally getting into remission, and long story short, I hit, I seek treatment, and I got better and healthier, and I'm cancer free for over 10 years now. And that was just having a different mindset, eating clean, try to stay away from seed oils and highly processed foods, oily foods. A lot of food contains MSG, preservatives, especially we live in America. I love living here. I love my freedom, but the food is garbage.
Yeah, true.
There's chains, there's franchisees. So the last several years, I was living, I moved over to San Diego for some amazing job opportunities, and still being an entrepreneur. One of my friends was a very successful higher up for a company called Vivint Solar. And he was like the president of the company. And Vivint Solar was like security, smart homes, and they were doing solar. And I thought that resonated well with me, because I'm like, I would like to do something that has to do with like having less of a carbon footprint for the world. So I was taken on as a territory sales manager for Vivint Solar. And I really believed in the company mission. It was a great product. And I was like, excelling pretty quickly in the company. And I think like where I felt like I want to drink the Kool-Aid in the company was after 3 months. I think I made over $400,000
in 3 months.
In 3 months of just grinding. And this was a grind. It's not an easy job. It's a very ugly job. Like you're knocking on people's door, So if you don't have the mental power and the
Yeah, you can't
confidence,
do that.
you will
Especially at that
easily
level.
run away, right?
Yeah.
Because you're given a certain territory, and basically you have to be a self-starter. You have to have a lot of conviction. You have to have a lot of self-confidence and desire,
Grit and
and
grind
grit and grind,
yeah,
right?
resilience.
So people think it's an easy grind, but it's very hard to get over all those, little things. And it's a lot of soft skills, right? Some people, they're good with certain technical things,
Yeah.
but if you can't dive deep and have a basic conversation with a customer and
interpersonal.
humanize things and keep things simple, when you talk too much in town, talk about the product too much and say, hey, this is how we're going to help your house and we're going to put this many solar panels, and you get all
Tell them the benefits.
technical, they lose you, right?
Yeah.
So you got to really learn to keep things simple and to have a connection. And I did that for close to 2-3 years. And the company merged with an organization called Sunrun, and that's like the biggest financer in the solar renewable space, a company based in San Francisco, spearheaded by this beautiful lady named Lynn. And she's like, the company is worth over $3 billion, and they merged with us. And I think they merged with us for $1.5 billion. And I was heavily invested in the company, and I also had a lot of shares in the company. So perfect storm. Got involved with that company, merged with Sunrun. Basically, I dumped all my stocks and became, a good amount of money I was able to retain. But I was also grinding and working a lot. So fast forward, the pandemic happened. So my father has already been deceased. He passed away from some health complications. He had an elective surgery in the hospital here at Hoag in Newport Beach. And he did an elective surgery to put a stents in his arm. After a day of doing the surgery, he was released the same day. And that night, he basically was pronounced dead.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so that was very difficult and very hard to deal with. So knowing that I love my mom and, I'm very close to her, I decided to sell off everything in San Diego and come move in with my mom over here in Irvine. And my only responsibility, I thought, was like, I needed to take care of my mom. I needed to look out for her mental health, her physical health, and her financial health, and just be like a provider for her, because she never worked a day in her life, right? And she didn't really know too much about her rights and anything like that. And unfortunately, the background my parents have, being immigrants, we didn't have like any death benefits, no life insurance, no nothing, brother. So we left a lot of debt from my dad's passing, a lot of costs that we had incurred, just brought a lot of stress. So luckily we have a lot of family and we're able to help take care of a lot of the debts that incurred. But later we found out there was a lot of property that my dad had invested in Vegas that all went downhill. We lost about a dozen homes out there. All went into foreclosure. There was like,
because there's nothing written,
almost close to $1 million worth of debt on his head. And basically my mom and dad's name were connected. So all of these debts incurred
goes to your mom.
Goes to my mom.
Yep.
So I was
and
just
this is
there.
a huge reason why I'm all into the life insurance, because of this. This happens to so many people because they don't know.
Of what not to do.
Yeah.
And it's so important to have those things in place. So fast forward, all these debts happen. So I'm talking to all these debt collectors every day and all these letters coming to the house, and my poor mom, lack of education, she's crying and worried and praying on it. I'm like, Mom, I know you're very religious and praying on things, but I'm like, that's not going to get things done. We have to actually do action. We got to get things done. I got to bring you to the Social Security office. I got to take you to this government office, and all these things we've been running around. I'm like, that's the least I could do. She took care of me while I was down and out and sick with cancer. I'm like, this is my time to shine and take care of her and do exactly what she's done for me. And it's my duty as a son.
Yeah.
That was my responsibility. So came back home, lived with mom for 2-3 years. And my younger brother had a car dealership right here on Irvine Center Drive and, Michelson.
Mm-hmm.
So I was grinding with him for about a year or two. And like in 12 months of working with him, I think we sold over 500 cars together. And I was just doing all the Facebook ads, Craigslist ads, and just helping, like doing what I do good, right? Sales came naturally to me.
Nice.
That wasn't a big deal. So my brother had given me an assignment. He said, Freddie, I need you to help me look for more parking spaces around Von Carmen or Michelson. So I ended up walking across the street from the business center into a building called Premier Workspaces here on 2102 Michelson Business Center Drive. And I was talking to the general manager at the time. His name was Nima. And I told him, hey, Nima, I'm looking to park some cars here for storage. If you don't mind, like, can we talk about it? Can we make a deal? Can you give me an office tour? Long story short, he gave me the office tour. It seemed all grand and very nice. And he told me, what is it that you do? And I told him, oh, my brother has a car dealership and we just kind of needed some parking spaces to park some additional cars. And he absolutely shut down the idea. He's like, no, we don't work with car dealers. We do not absolutely want any cars parked here, especially from car dealers, you know, it comes with a bad rep. But he said, there's this cafeteria deli inside the building that's been abandoned for 2-3 years. It used to be a place called Bernardo's Deli. Kind of gave me some backstory. Like, this guy used to be here for over 20 years. His name is George. So he had passed away.
So he's like, we don't have parking space, but we have this space.
Yeah, but we have this space.
Interested?
He's like, there's an opportunity here, because we kind of got to talking and connecting. The things I told him was that I love food and that's like one of my passions.
Okay.
So he kind of helped develop my thought for what was to happen a little bit later, which was for a week or two, had this guy's contact information. He reached out to me 2 weeks later. He's like, hey, Freddie, I still have the deli space available. However, there's another food restaurant company and they're from Riverside and they're planning to sign the lease like sometime next week on Monday. He's like, I just really liked your vibe and our connection. He's like, I thought maybe, I don't know, you mentioned something about food. You like food and like making kebabs and things like that on the family get-togethers. He's like, maybe you try something here. And he kind of planted the seeds for me. I never thought like that I'm going to be a restaurateur or open a restaurant, but I know that I've always been innately an entrepreneur and I've loved food. But a week went by, he hit me up. I have a conversation with my mom, and a couple of days later, I go in my walk-in closet and I see a chef coat hanging in my room. And I look and I laugh and I grab it and I show my mom. I'm like, is this somebody's chef coat or what is this? And then my mom is like, no, this is for you. She's like, that restaurant deli thing opportunity you're telling me about, she's like, you should go for it.
Oh, she bought that for you?
She bought it for me. It was a total surprise.
Oh, wow.
So,
like, it was like a prophetic act of like, look,
so
see yourself.
I mean, this restaurant thing. Like, And then I ended up just doing some test runs and had a couple names and had a couple ideas. And every friend and contact that I had, they told me, Freddie, like, you should name the restaurant after you because you're like a charismatic guy. You have a lot of energy. You're cool. We know you. We love you. So just name it Freddie. So I ended up opening up a restaurant inside the building that I was proposing to find parking spaces. And the general manager said, hey, I'll throw in a couple parking spaces for you between you and me off the books. He's like, you know, you take over the deli, just do a test run. And I was scared because I'm like, family, friends, we have get-togethers, I'm barbecuing, making food, but they'll tell you your food is good because they're getting it for free and they're guests at your house. So they don't make you upset, right? So I'm conceptualizing this idea that, hey, I'm going to be like making food for the masses for a big city in Orange County, Irvine, next to the airport. I just kind of started playing with food items, and I've always made food and recipes at home, like spices and herbs I'd mix together. But I'm like, the food that I make at home is not going to translate well in the fast-paced environment that we live in today, right? And the foods we make being a lot of rice and side dishes like curries and vegetables, and it takes a lot of time. And so I thought, like, what's something light and easy that most Americans and people living in this day and age working 9 to 5 go to? It's wraps, salads, sandwiches. And these are foods that now I'm exposed to because being a 2-time cancer survivor, it was important for me to eat light food that converts to energy, where I come back to the office, I'm not feeling lethargic, tired, the burrito sweats, I call it. And you're just like foggy brain, the food foggy coma. Brain. You run into the bathroom for the last 2 hours of your shift, you know? So I started playing with the ideas of like, hey, let me do like turkey avocados. Like, let me do, and I would study. I became a student again in deli shops, like Larry's Deli, Gary's Deli, Jersey Mike's, and I would go there, and they would freak out and look at me like, "Is this guy getting ready to rob?" It's like I would just be there, and I have to
Because
finally.
you were just watching
I'm
everything.
watching everything for like 20 minutes. It got me so excited, honestly. So I started to tell these people, "Hey, if you don't mind, I'm gonna observe how your customers interact, what these customers are ordering." And 9 out of 10 times, people were super okay with like me coming in there and observing them, and they were okay with that. So I started learning, implementing some ideas, and
Good.
just asking the owners what their whys were, like what got them into the food industry. And it was very relatable. Like they love food, they love people, and it brought the community together, right? Because that was like people's escape for their lunchtime was like to
So
get
this
away
started
from
to
the
show
desk.
you what it really was, and started to show you that this matches you, matches your
Yeah.
values, matches your passion, matches, bringing community that's even tied to your mom, bringing community and
Yeah.
how it was in your home. It's so you're seeing this and hearing it, you're like, this is for me.
And it was not discouraging because the restaurant owners were very helpful. They would give me all their resources. They would give me the restaurant supply people, their distributors, suppliers.
So it wasn't like, you're my competitor. I'm not
No,
gonna tell you.
it totally changed my expectations, because initially I thought like they're not going to steer me in the right direction, but they genuinely cared, because it's already a very hard competitive industry. And I felt like some of the connections I made from these restaurateurs, some of them I befriended was John Reed. He's and Leslie Nguyen, the successful owners of Boscat Kitchen and the 10 sushi restaurants. A couple other people I befriended was the owner of Wahoo's, Ed. And they all just basically like stayed close to me, and they all told me like, "Freddie, like
Beautiful.
this is something you should stick to, like do your thing." Like I would just make sample of like
To
tuna
even have other
sandwiches.
people that are doing it tell you that.
It
Like,
was
it's a
very
big
encouraging. It
motivator,
was
yeah.
very helpful, and it made me feel like I'm on the right course. And just seeing the outpour of support and people in the community coming to support me. And the first couple of months, it was challenging because everyone in my family was discouraging, except for my mom. They were all telling me this is a bad idea. Go back to working a regular job. Like there's no insurance in what you're doing. It's the highest fail rate, right? More than 70% of restaurants when they first open fails.
Uh-huh.
Especially my brother up in the Bay Area, who's kind of my role model and aspire to be better, Mr. Frank, the tech guy. He just told me, "Freddie, you're in the wrong field, bro. What are you doing? The margins are low. There's no money to be made." To me, I felt like I want to prove this guy wrong, and everyone else is telling me just to give up on this,
Uh-huh.
And I just kept practicing my craft. It took me about a year to develop the menu, and like our biggest staples now is like the turkey avocado, the
But
chicken
this is
pesto
the stuff you're
panini.
figuring out and learning as you're paying overhead, as you're
Oh yeah, on the
like
fly.
you have
yeah.
responsibilities,
Oh,
so
yeah, it
you're
was
figuring out as you're
challenging,
going.
yeah.
That's
the
hard.
first 6 months I wasn't making money. There were days where I barely made $14 working 8 hours and $0, no customers. Like the first 6 months, it was regular for me to have 2-3 days without having any business at all.
Wow.
So I started implementing a thing. Like I thought I need to do some guerrilla marketing and do my own thing, telling people like, "Pay me what you think it's worth," like doing suggested retailing. And they would tell me, "Oh, I want to pay you $10." And I'm like, "Oh, my sandwich is worth $10." And I undershot myself because I thought like, "Oh, it's not worth more than $5, things like that.
Interesting.
And people started telling me, "Oh, I'll happily pay $10, $12, whatever." So I started refining the items on the menu, started to adjust the prices according to the cost of goods and have it make sense to where my margins were good and decent. And fast forward to 2 years later, the business has been growing. I've been asked to turn it into a franchise several times and having investors approach me. But I'm still at that development phase where I'm enjoying the growing and the learning process, and learning about opportunities in the food space, like how I can leave less of a carbon footprint, right? The biggest thing about food is also that there's a lot of food waste in my industry. So if you go behind Chipotle or Dunkin' Donuts and certain restaurants, you'll see thousands of pounds of food waste every week. And I thought like, I don't want to be a part of this problem, having high carbon footprint, being a part of this problem for food waste. So I started joining certain organizations like Too Good To Go. It's like a nonprofit that basically helps eliminate a lot of the carbon footprint. So those days where I would over prep and make certain cold cuts and sandwiches, I would put my things on the app called Too Good to Go, and they have these people enrolled in this app, and they're basically paying like $10
They get
a month,
alerted to go get.
and they're getting
things
like
for
$30 worth of food for basically 30%, 40% less, and they're getting like 2-3 sandwiches for like
Never heard of
$10.
this.
Yeah, so I thought, wow, this is also
pretty
driving
cool.
the marketing. You're getting like a couple thousand, 100,000 impressions on a regular week.
Nice.
So I thought, wow, this is a good opportunity to also grow the business, but also help leave less of a carbon footprint. And in growing up in a household with immigrants, that's one thing I didn't believe in, was like food waste. Like, hey, you got to finish everything on your plate.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't know where the next
Yep.
meal is coming from.
Yep.
So that's how it was. And I always felt like I want to be an advocate for helping promote health and wellness through being a cancer survivor. I thought like that was one of my whys, was I want to do this food thing, not because I'm going to be making crazy amounts of money,
Because you're bringing value
but because
into.
I want to let people know that as a 2-time cancer survivor, it not only took a certain mindset, but it took a certain diet. So I started like eating more salads, having more wraps, having less processed food. So in my deli today, I still don't have a single microwave, oil fryers. I have guilty-free foods, but like food that people
Tastes
love.
good. Yeah.
Right? Like I have French fries that I use, but I use the air fryer. So use like olive oil instead of seed oils, and they're not heavily batched in oil. I do a lot of like burgers because I've always been a burger guy, right? I grew up loving McDonald's and In-N-Out
Yeah.
and Chick-fil-A, but those things have a lot of seed oils and highly processed food. So that's not a sustainable diet. So I thought I want to incorporate a lot of my favorite foods, but I want to have a healthy twist to it.
Perfect.
So I learned to source my things locally. I started attending a lot of farmer markets in Orange County, and started making friendships with the local farmers from Modesto Farms, Riverside Farms, in those nearby towns. People who are growing their own, vegetables.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
good
I would
sources for you.
want to support those guys. So I said, hey, what is it going to take for me to make a deal with you where I get 20 pounds of tomatoes every week from you and 60 pounds of avocados with you? So I have certain relationships that I've built from these farmer markets.
Perfect.
And
That's
we're
what it's
helping
about.
another small business, be more sustainable. And I have certain things that I carry in my deli that are always fresh. And the thing about my space is that it's really small. It's like less than 200 square feet. But that's important to me, and it's practical because it forces me to stay fresh. I don't have freezers there.
Yeah.
So I
Can't
only
put that
have
much.
enough. I only have enough product that is only good for a week. So and that's good because it teaches me how to be more organized, more disciplined,
Yeah.
and kind of how to, have fresh food, and not highly processed foods. Like I don't buy food from Cisco and a lot of
It's
these
not going to
major
last longer than a
suppliers
week
like
anyways, so you have to use
Costco,
it.
where you buy things to freeze them all month, and I only have enough things that will last a week. So it's the freshest you can possibly get
Yep.
locally.
Good stuff, man. So now you've been growing that. It's getting better. You're getting some traction to the point where you hired people to work there. It's not just you.
Yeah.
You're able to pull away from it. You actually, expanded into another location with some drinks and coffees and smoothies, right?
Yeah.
So you're getting traction, man. So what would be, first of all, thank you for sharing, your life. And because for me, when I met you, I don't know, how long has it been now?
It's been close to almost maybe a year. I wanna
Almost
say.
a year?
Yeah. It's been a while. Yeah. Time goes by pretty
So
fast.
when I met you, I appreciated, the personality. You're a very, very nice and friendly, like with me, but then I watch you, right? Because I'm there, I'm eating or I'm walking through and I see your interaction with everybody. It's very personable. You make eye contact, call them by their names. You know personal information about them because you'll be like, hey, how is this and that? And you have things to do, but you'll sit there and you'll listen. And you're not like, it's not like you have no work to do. There's people there.
Yeah.
But you make it like intentional to, I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm hearing what these people are saying and it's nonsense
Yeah.
and it's complaining or
Yeah.
it's the same story that I've heard them say there a few times and it's
Yeah.
the same thing. And I still
Yeah.
see it with the same freaking patience,
Yeah.
the same care, and they feel that. And
Yeah.
that's why they keep going back. And not like they have, obviously the food is good too, but you're making them feel good
Yeah.
when they're there. And when they leave, they're feeling good too because what they ate. Right. So I want to say good job.
Thank you. So much.
To that. God's going to bless it even more because I know we were talking about this earlier that it's kind of hidden. Right. But yet it's being blessed. It's growing. And you're even thinking of, okay, I need to get it to another location where it's more exposed.
Yeah.
And it's have more room and more space. And I see that you're not stopping. Like you're actually already thinking that you're always thinking of bettering things. You don't just get stuck or comfortable. This is why I wanted to bring you on here
I appreciate
to
that.
show, it wasn't easy for you. You had a pretty good upbringing, but there was struggle. You got bullied. You had to learn how to fight, stand up for yourself, how to learn. Like knowledge is really power for you
true.
because you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna figure this out. But then you would do something with it. You're willing to get out of comfort and actually take action. And this is what keeps getting you going. You're blessed. You have other people around you that are on fire.
Yeah.
That challenges you.
Yeah.
That gives you encouragement as well. So you're not alone.
Believe it or not, Richard, I would have to say you were one of them, actually, because when I would be walking around the deli, I noticed you and I made it a point to say, like, that guy looks very important. That guy looks like a leader in our community. I want to know that guy. And I'm so blessed to be in the industry that I'm in, the food, because it's Freddy's Deli is just not about the food. It's about the community. And I'm bringing people closer together. And that's the biggest driver for me is like, I love people. I love my community. I always get involved with nonprofits, with going to organizations because it speaks volumes to me. I just like that I can do something selfless. And I learned in life through all of the things that I've been through, it's not about me, so it's always about doing God's work and helping out and doing what we can to pave the next road for the next generation.
Good job. Beautiful, man. So I want you to look into the camera right here and share, again, who you are, what your businesses are, and how they can come and find you. Like what they are, what you're serving, like a little commercial for them both.
Absolutely. Hi, guys. My name is Freddie Nawabi. I'm the owner, operator, and janitor. Happy to be at Freddy's Deli. And we're continuing to expand. Look out for us on Freddy's Deli _. And also you can get on our website at freddysdelioc.com. We do catering. We're Health Conscious Deli. We're locally here in Irvine. And another project that we've been expanding on is Java Hut Express, family-owned operation. And we source good matcha from Japan and amazing locally brewed coffee that we pride ourselves in, and using cleaner ingredients and good beans and good healthy food that we have sourced from local farmers that we work with here in California.